Welcome, Samuel, to Metallarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Phobocosm, this new album, this new album Getaway, and more things related to the metal world in general. So we are starting by asking, how are you doing today, and how is the band during the last couple of years? Because your previous album, For Ordained, was released in 2023.
First of all, thank you for the interview. It's really great that you contacted us. And uh, we've had a very busy last couple of years. Just promoting the previous album and working on some new material. I've written a lot of stuff, and me and the rest of the band are just working on it together. So there's a lot of Phobocosm material that's going to be released in the next few years. Maybe even another album next year or at the beginning of 2027. So there's more material than I thought I'd be able to write in my entire lifetime. So we're pretty busy with that. We did our first European tour last year, and about a year ago in October, and we're going back to Europe in August. And we're probably going to do a few shows in our country when the album is released, or maybe in the spring, because we just played in Montreal,
Mhm.
so which is our hometown. So I think it would be better to wait a little bit, but yeah, we're definitely aiming to play as much as possible promoting the new album. And then we're going to resume work on the future album, which is already written as far as guitars and drums, but we just need to do the rest of the stuff, so bass and vocals.
Okay. Okay, Phobocosm sounds is often described as oppressive and massive, like Death Doom. So how has your approach to creating this specific atmosphere evolved since the band's formation in 2008?
Well, uh, as far as where we're at in our evolution, I think we've gotten better at writing this type of stuff with each album,
Mhm.
but in a way, I think Gateway is the kind of like the last step of this
Mhm.
first incarnation of the band, because it's not that we're gonna do something really different, but it's just that when we started being a band, and we just decided that our first three albums would be a trilogy.
Mhm.
And since because of the pandemic, we managed to have enough material for a second album when we released Foreordained. The material was written at the same time as Foreordained, so it kind of sounds, well, it's kind of like cohesive. It's not completely different. So I don't know, we still have the same goals musically, which is to write the darkest material possible and to have really doomy moments and crushing moments, as well as fast moments with a little bit of mid-pace material. But I think the next material that we're going to come up with, judging by what it's already written, is going to be a little more death metal and a little less doom metal. We're always going to keep the doom elements in our music, but it just so happens that the new material we've written is more kind of like death metal with more blast beats and a little faster. But we're gonna, of course, make sure that we keep the doom elements because they've been in our DNA ever since we started playing together. And I feel it's important because we don't want to, just move away from that stuff like it never was there. It's there for a reason. We're really huge fans of Doom. It so happens that, I mean, the next material is a little more death metal. But so yeah, I think a Gateway is kind of like the culmination of this type of material that we've written since the band started. So it was supposed to be a trilogy, but in the end, it ended up being four albums. It's just that I don't know if you've noticed this, but the first three albums, and I don't know if you got a promo for Gateway, but there's
Mhm.
kind of like a formula as well. When it comes to the pacing of the album, it starts with a doomy song to establish the atmosphere, and then it goes faster, stuff like that, and it ends with an epic song. This is something that we've done since the beginning. It was no accident. We did that on purpose. uh, I think the little things that were there on each album are are going to be there for our next material, but we don't feel like we have to follow the template that the first four albums followed for the upcoming stuff. So it's going to be a little bit different.
Okay, okay. Now, the name Phobocosm suggests a universe of fears. So, how does the central concept influence your music, from the lyrical content to the composition and overall the aesthetic?
Um, I remember perfectly when we came up with the name Phobocosm. Actually, it was our singer Etienne who came up with it. A lot of people thought that for some reason our name had something to do with, you know, cosmic stuff, but it doesn't have anything to do with that. It's just kind of like a made-up word that's kind of like phobos and cosm, which is kind of like cosm is kind of like the order of things. So it's kind of like a phobia of when things are, really I don't know, in a pattern and stuff like that. And the fact that we've always used dissonance in our music and chaotic elements, it's one of the reasons we went with name, because we had a lot of suggestions. We came up with a huge list, and this is the name that was kind of like, yeah, it's a made up word, which always helps when you form a new band. You're not going to see that name anywhere else. And the fact that it was kind of like, since we knew why those two words were combined to make this new word that didn't exist, it made sense for us to go with that name, because dissonance and chaos and, suffocating atmospheres, it's always been there in our music. And what I don't know, I can't think of any better way of coming up with a band name that having that band name reflect the essence of your music and what you're trying to do musically and lyrically.
Okay, okay, I understand. So,
Mhm.
your music is complex and challenging to listen to. Often the future and long, draw out passages. Is this thought slog, as I read and review for the one album, so our intentional choice to force the listener into a certain state of mind of experience?
Absolutely. Yes. We could go for riffs that are and songs that are really easy to digest, but I don't know. For us,
Mhm.
with the stuff that we listen to when it comes to dark death metal, we like to be challenged, and we don't like to go with the obvious. You know, there, there's always certain types of riffs that you can put in a song, and that people are gonna like that. If there's a riff that we really like and we feel that it might be catchy, cool, but we're not gonna put it there because it's catchy. We're gonna include it in the song because it fits the vision and the atmosphere that we have in mind. So I don't know. For us, it's always really important to stick to darkness and something really oppressive.
Mhm.
So that's why.
Okay, okay. Now, well, you mentioned about these albums like a little beyond for the trilogy that you created first band. So now, if we relate the concept of the trilogy for the Deprived, Bringers of Truth, and Foreign, so could you elaborate on the decision to structure your first three albums as a connective narrative?
Well, when we did Deprived, at
Mhm.
first we didn't really. I don't think it was something that was conscious that it was going to be a concept album. It's just that we looked at the lyrics and we were like, okay, there's kind of like a theme that's featured all throughout the album, and we're like, what the hell? Well, why just not do a trilogy of kind of like different iterations of that concept? So I think Deprived was more, I don't know, it was more kind of like apocalyptic. Bringer
Mhm.
of Drought was more apocalyptic too, but in a since it featured four songs, were like kind of like four elements of nature that go all out on utter destruction. So we went with that concept. Foreign was kind of like apocalyptic stuff, but mostly it was mostly about death itself. And Gateway is more about when you're trying to die, but someone doesn't want you to die, and you get tortured and forever. In a way, Gateway was kind of like the song Revival on Foreign was kind of like an extension of what we use on that song. So we kind of like exploited that concept, and we went really far with that, with a perverse way of using science to torture someone that should be dead, but you're just torturing that person for way too long by reviving the person and keeping the person alive artificially and stuff like that. So it's kind of like different iterations of a similar concept, but it's mostly about destruction and death and apocalypse and the end of the world. So this is the main concept that was kind of like used for the first four albums.
Okay, okay. Now, the trilogy is complete. So, how do you reflect on this major body of work? Does closing that chapter free you up to explore new thematic or musical directions?
When it comes to lyrics, I'm not sure what we're gonna do, but knowing our singer who writes the lyrics, it's probably gonna be similar in a way, but I think we're gonna be going in a little bit of a different direction, by maybe making things more kind of like super dark but more poetic. This is what we have in mind. How it's gonna end up, I don't know, but this is kind of like an idea that we had. But musically, yeah, as I said, it's gonna be a little more, a little faster, but not faster in terms of BPMs, but more kind of like just more blast beats, more fast parts. We're not gonna start playing at 300 BPMs. This is never gonna happen in Phobocosm, because I don't know. We don't really listen to that type of stuff, so we wouldn't be comfortable to do that. But it's just gonna be overall more fast parts. But yeah, it's pretty embryonic so far, because the guitars and drums are written, but we just finished the song, so they might change. And uh, actually, the future album, the fifth album is written, but we have something like 13 or 14 other songs that are kind of like in different stages of composition after that. So the 6 songs that we have ready for the next album, the fifth one, are they the songs that are going to be the 6 songs that are going to be on the next release? Maybe, maybe not, because if we complete other songs that we're like, yeah, this one would fit more with the rest of the stuff and what we're going for, we're going to do that. And since we have this new album that's coming out at the end of 2025, there's not really a hurry to put out another album. But since we have all of this material to just go back to being creative and keeping the machine going, it's probably going to be sooner than later. So yeah, it's pretty embryonic. So things might change, but so far it's more fast parts and a little more mid-paced, and the doomy parts are there, but uh, they're a little less present. But
Okay,
it's
okay.
still chaotic, and it's still oppressive, and it's still really crushing and stuff. This is going to be there for forever. We're not going to turn into a brutal death metal band. We like that stuff, but that's not us. That's not the vision of the band. So it's just going to be a different version of what we were already doing, just a little faster, maybe.
Okay, okay, I understand. Well, I hear the completed getaway. So in this one, also I read under a review. Snip mentioned that getaway is a killer riffing machine with crushing harmonies that grind bones to pulp. So can you discuss the specific production choices or songwriting shifts led to this intense, massive sound?
hmm Well, since it was mixed and mastered at the same time as Forward, and it was kind of like exactly, because if you compare the sound of both albums, it's the same thing, because everything was done at the same time, except for vocals. But our intent was kind of like to do what we did on the first 2 albums, but to make maybe the guitars a little more easy to decipher, because our music is pretty dense and chaotic. So sometimes when we listen to the first 2 albums, we're like, yeah, we wrote those songs, so we know what's happening musically, but sometimes it can be hard to really hear the intricate stuff that we have all over the place. It's nothing is technical or complicated in our music. It's just that it's pretty intricate, and the details sometimes they get lost in the mix because of the way our riffs are written and the production choices that we made. So for the last two albums that were done at the same time, we really tried to use different gear and to just make sure that the guitars were a little clearer, easier to hear. But of course, we might have made some mistakes along the way, because one thing that we always do, and we're like, we have to be more careful next time. We always use a lot of distortion on the bass, and it was a pretty big challenge to make sure that we could hear guitars properly because of that, really distorted bass tone. So on our future material, we're going to be more careful to just make sure that the bass is always present, because it's important to us. We don't only have our bass player just play the root notes and stuff like that. The bass parts contribute to the riffs and the songs, but it's just they're so hard to mix with the guitar so that it doesn't screw up the guitar's frequencies. That this is something that we did for Foreordained and Gateway, but we succeeded as much as we could. But if we could go back to when we were working on the mix, maybe we would tone down the bass a little bit, because it's caused a lot of nightmares to us and to our poor friend Xavier, who mixed the album. Poor guy. 17 mixes and 7 masters. So yeah, it's a huge challenge. And I'm not gonna go into like geek details about the way that our riffs are written, but there's some things that we always do with the guitar parts that are kind of like are making things harder to hear it. When you hear us play at the rehearsal room, it's yeah, this is what they're playing. But on an album with the rest of the the drums and the vocals and stuff like that, it's a little hard to hear. So we've made a conscious effort to fine tune that, and I think it's, well, at least to my ear as a songwriter, it's obvious on Foreordained and on Gateway that you can hear what's going on a little bit more, but it's still a work in progress, and it's going to be definitely better next time.
Okay. Now let's talk about the cover for this new album. The album artwork by Lauri Laaksonen from
Yep.
Desolate Shrine, so has
Yep.
been a prominent feature of your releases. So how does the artwork for Gateway visually represent the music and themes with the album?
As you've probably noticed, since Foreordained and Gateway were kind of like linked together by the fact that they were written at the same time and mixed and recorded at the same time, it's just we really wanted to have Laurie do a combination, not a continuation, I mean, of what he did for Foreordained. So Foreordained is kind of like more, it's a little more abstract, because the concept of Foreordained, it's like something that is unavoidable. How do you represent that in an artwork? So we told Laurie, just go with something that's kind of like ominous and that it's menacing. But for Gateway, since the concept of a gateway is a little less abstract, we just told Laurie, just keep a similar color palette to the one that you use for Foreordained, so that the albums it's obvious that they're linked together, but maybe represent the gateway from a certain perspective on the album cover, and inside of the gatefold or the CD booklet, you kind of see the same thing from inside. So it's kind of like it's a gateway of that it's somewhere you don't want to be, because there's going to be something really bad on the other side. So this is what we tried to have Laurie draw on the album cover. And working with that guy, he's been on our list ever since we started the band. So we're really glad that he accepted to work with us. And as long as he wants to work with us, we're gonna keep using him, because he's a really cool guy, and he really understands our vision and where we're going for visually and musically. So I think it was a really good match. And when I look at it, maybe it's because I was involved, but it's kind of like gateway, and you see the album cover. Yeah, of course it's a gateway. You kind of it's obvious.
Okay.
It's the most obvious album cover we've had so far when it comes to the album's title. and the artwork itself.
Okay, okay. So Etienne Bayard, the bass and vocals from Phobocosm, provides the sepulchral growls that define the vocal style, mixture when you parts of vocals. So how do the vocal patterns interact with the complex, often unconventional riff structures?
Um, when it comes to vocals and vocal patterns, we always work the same way. Etienne has a really good. I always tell him just go with your first draft of lyrics and vocal patterns. We're gonna work on it together, and usually he comes up with his first draft of what he's going to do vocally is already pretty good. And I don't even know if it's something conscious that he does or he just has this talent to just go with vocal patterns that really fit with the riffs without having him sing the riffs, because it's kind of like sometimes it works to use exactly the same pattern in the vocals as the riff itself, but a lot of singers just end up singing the riff, which is maybe it's easier to play and sing at the same time when you're doing the exact same rhythm, but it's a little, I don't know, it's a little boring most of the time. And I don't know, Etienne really has this ability to come up with a really good first draft, and then he shows it to me, and I ruin everything by telling him telling him add vocals there and there and there and there. So there's a lot of vocals because I think his voice is kind of like the fifth instrument in Phobocosm, and it really had something, and it's just not something in the background that you don't really care about. It's there. It has kind of like it does what it's supposed to do. First of all, it's a really unique type of voice. I'm so glad I have this guy singing in our band. He's awesome. And as soon as you hear him, you know that it's him. So it's just, I don't know. It's pretty natural for him to come up with his first draft, and then I expand upon it, and we manage to make something that is, I don't know. Every single time when we finish the album and we add the vocals, I'm like, the songs were pretty good at first, but now they're fucking awesome thanks to your vocals. And he's super humble, and he's like, "Oh, really? Yeah." So as you probably noticed too, maybe one of the reasons why his vocal patterns are so good is that one of his main inspirations is Ross from Immolation, which always has this tendency to do exactly what the song needs vocally. So he's probably even more inspired by Ross than he thinks he is, because he's really good at it. So I feel I feel blessed to have a singer like that who can just come up with awesome patterns like Etienne does.
Mhm. Okay, okay. Your songs are often lengthy. For example, in all your careers, songs like the Forever in Doubt with more than 11 minutes, or other song Fallen more than 12 minutes. Now in Fordene you have, for example, a song Primal Dread more than 10 minutes, and now you have another song like Beyond the Threshold of Flesh more than 8 minutes. So what is your approach to song structure and pacing, ensuring that longer tracks maintain an oppressive atmosphere without losing the listener?
Yeah, it's something that we've noticed, that we tend to write songs that are a little longer than most death metal bands do.
Mhm.
But thinking about it, I always come up with the same answer in my head. It's because we have slow parts, and when you play slow, if you want to do 4 or 8 or 12 repeats, depending on the part, the amount of times that you want it to come back, of course, it's gonna make the songs longer. And all of the songs that you mentioned have pretty long doomy parts, so it takes a lot of time. And we've tried. I remember for Primal Dread, we've tried making it a little bit shorter, and it sounded like something was missing. because just having a really cool part that's slow and having it only once in the song can be cool, but sometimes it's a pattern that you're like, kind of stays in your head. We have to make this little part come back, and then, oh shit, we just added 30 more seconds to the song. So it's kind of like accidental in a way, but it's really because of the fact that the doom aspect in our band is really important, because our songs that don't really have huge doom parts are kind of like shorter. So that would be my explanation.
Hmm.
We don't do that on purpose. And most of the time, I'm gonna reveal another thing that is kind of like present in the template that we use for the first few releases.
Hmm.
Forever in Doubt and Fallen and For a Neon and Beyond the Threshold of Flesh.
Hmm.
There's songs that are kind of like a tribute to the album closers that Immolation had on their albums from Here and After until Unholy Cult. So kind of like slower songs. Well, songs that can start fast, but that they end slow, and they're kind of like epic, and you feel devastated when the song finishes and the riff stays in your head. This is what we were trying to do with all of those songs, and it's probably something that it's gonna stay here forever in the way that we finish albums, because we just don't want to have a random song finishing the album that's like, it's one of the songs. No, it has to be something that, if you were patient enough to listen to the album until the end, you kind of like get a little reward at the end with that haunting song that kind of stays in your head. And it really, if you feel crushed, you're gonna be crushed even more. So this is why we have those long songs, and they always, when we write long songs, except for Primal Dread, they always end up at the end of the album for that reason,
Hmm.
because they're
Okay. Oh,
doomier and stuff.
okay. Okay. So now we're very close to this interview, Samuel. So,
Mhm.
and for this, what are the immediate and long-term goals for Phobocosm following the release from Getaway? And perhaps you will embark tours in Latin America. Who knows? Who knows? And Europe, or perhaps, as you said it, you work in a fifth album now, perhaps releasing soon, very very close to this Getaway.
Yeah, so I think, since we've done a few tours in North America, our priority now is to tour Europe, and because we noticed that a lot of people who like bands that are not similar to us, but in the same genre that we are, don't really know us. And maybe it's because we're one of the rare bands in North America that plays this style of music. Maybe not. We don't know why, but I think we have to exploit this, the fact that so little people know us in Europe, by going there, with the right bands, and making sure that that we spread the name, and that people hear about us. Uh, when it comes to South America, why not? If we get a decent offer, of course we're going to consider it, because we want to play anywhere that people want us to play. It's just sometimes, financially it has to be logical. But for now, I think our main goal is going to be to go to Europe a few times, and maybe end up on some festivals to just make the name of the band circulate a little more. Uh, we definitely, as you mentioned, we want to keep writing new music. Our goal actually is to release, after Gateways, to release one album a year for at least the 3 next years. Will it be feasible? I don't know, but I think with the amount of material that we have, it's ambitious, but it's something that is doable, and we're gonna make sure that we try to do that. If we fail it's not the end of the world if it's a year and a half instead of 1 year, but we're gonna aim at doing this, because when we're really concentrating on writing music, usually it keeps the band on its toes, and we have this hunger to just do things, and just not, we're gonna wait a little bit, a few months. When we have this goal to just push the band, it really it makes things happen a lot faster. So this is pretty much what we're gonna try to do, and as I mentioned, playing festivals all over the planet would be something that's pretty cool. We've done a few of them in North America, a few of them in Europe, but you're in South America, right?
Right, right, right.
So, if we get an invitation to play in South America, that would be awesome because I know that there's a lot of maniacs who like that sort of music that we do, and playing for you guys would be awesome.
Great, great. So, and well, Samuel, we arrived to the sad moment of this interview. Thank you very much for your time. It was a tremendous pleasure to have you right now in Mentalarium. This new album is a great one. Congratulations on this net getaway. And perhaps you want to add something to your Latin American fans and obviously Mentalarium followers.
Keep listening to awesome metal and being as passionate as you are, because the Latin American fans of metal are so dedicated and so intense. Stay like that, because we need you guys for the future of metal, and hopefully we'll get a chance to play in front of you guys sooner than later. And thank you very much for the interview.